Hi everyone, Darren Hunter here, and I'm with Michael Sanz, and this is the Outsourced PM podcast show. Michael, we're getting a lot of good feedback around these very informative podcasts and really opening up everyone's eyes. In this day and age of crisis, Michael, there's just so much crisis out there. Tell us about that. What's happening out there that you're seeing with this staffing crisis going on?
It is absolutely crazy. We're seeing people with no experience demanding the highest level of salary to their employers, just to stay around. They're wanting better quality of life. People are wanting to work from home, from their beach house. The expectations of having staff in an office is just totally next level now. Like previously, Darren and I could hire a trainee who'd come from Woolworths or Coles and put them through some training, and they would be on a trainee salary. Not anymore.
Not anymore. And COVID has really pushed a lot of people out of the industry because there has been so many difficulties. So a lot of quality people have left, or a lot of quality property managers are now starting up their own at-home rent rollers as well. So there is a real disruption going on in the property management industry. So, if you haven't ever employed a virtual assistant before, this is a real solution to a staffing problem where you can actually take up to 80% of your property management tasks right now that's keeping your team worn down and busy, and put those tasks with a virtual assistant. Now, one of those key tasks that takes up a lot of time is processing applications. And we're going to talk about that today and how to do that with a virtual assistant. Already old school property managers, including people like me, Michael, thinking, well, how can that be done? How can applications be processed by virtual assistants? There'll be a lot of gaps, a lot of problems, but your team, Michael, with Teams by Design, has a number of property management clients where you are processing applications, and you've done 100,000 applications with those offices already. I mean, that's crazy.
Darren, it's probably the very first type of task we offered our clients all those years ago when we started was application processing. And it's come a long way in the last 3 or 4 years, like a massive way. Now there's more automations around application processing. But it was one of those things at the start where, as an agency ourselves and getting so many applications, it takes up a lot of time, like for an agency. And I don't think business owners really realize how much time it takes up. And, we'll touch on it later, but depending on where you are and how many properties you've got for rent at any one time, your office could be shut down just from processing applications.
Yeah, absolutely. How much time are you, if a virtual assistant is doing processing applications properly and successfully, and we're going to talk about that today, how much genuine time is this taking off the property managers at the moment with this task is keeping them really busy? How much time saving is it?
If officers aren't just doing a general look, tick and flick, putting someone in on the general feel, applications take somewhere between, like half an hour, 45 minutes to about an hour and a half, depending on how many applicants there are. Of course, the more applicants you've got, the more references you're following up and you're checking on. But we have to make sure as an external company doing applications that we're following all the checks and we're doing everything the right way. Total, actual time trying to complete the application may take a few hours, a day and a half, because you're chasing people down for the references and everything there. But that's 20% of applications need that. The other 80% probably fall into that bracket.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. So let's now, let's just go through a process here, a step-by-step process to get a virtual assistant to process an application. And we're really following the process that your team does these. Okay. So, what's the first cab off the rank? What's the first step that a VA should be doing?
I guess depending on where you're at, we have clients where we're handling their leasing process. So people will go and view the property, and then we're calling them after that to see how they felt about the property. Are they applying? And then we're following them up there. Other agencies will go through and review the applications that have come in over the weekend or in the morning and say, please process these 6 applications. We've already done pre-qualifications. And then, there are 50% of the agents out there We do a BS test. We go through the application. We would do a ticket check. We'll check the income and see if they meet basic parameters to go to the next stage. Right. Once we've done that and they meet certain criteria, we then go through and we'll send the privacy pages off to the employers, the previous employers, the rental accommodation, and so on. Now, Darren, there is some software out there at the moment that will send out privacy pages and also email out referencing questions. Right, that's fine, but I still find that property managers are too busy to reply to them in a reasonably fast turnaround time. And also too, Darren, one of the things that's frustrating with that setup, whilst it's good, gone are the days when property managers are now listening to the pregnant pauses and the BS of a property manager trying to get rid of a tenant. You know, when we're sending off those privacy pages, we always call up the real estate agent, let them know, hey, Darren, Michael at TBD Realty, we've just sent off the privacy pages and some reference questions. We just want to know if we can complete that now and get that out of the way. Right. And then when we're asking questions, or reference questions, our team are trained to listen to, Darren, what did you think of Dennis? And then say, oh, yeah, Dennis is fine. Yep, no problem. We will then, go further on that and say, okay, it sounded like you're a little bit hesitant there. Can you tell me a little bit more about Dennis? And we ask more pre-qualifying questions. If you're just sending off the questionnaire for a property manager to reply to, you're not always going to pick up on that BS.
So this is the biggest issue. Certainly, if I'm speaking on behalf of experienced property managers, this is where their big hang-up will be.
Well, it used to be like when we first started doing applications, the biggest concern was, Michael, how are your team trained to pick up the flavor of the phone call? Because that comes with years of experience. But now so many agencies are using these soulless reference checking, which might be fine for them, right?
They just want to type these things, and you're right. Anyone can say anything on typing text and sending it off.
Yeah, and so, but that's now gone, and it's no longer, it's a concern for us, Darren, because ultimately, as you know, the quality of the rent roll is a reflection of the application process and the people that you put in there. That's the quality of that. How are people now building a quality rent roll in such times when they're not doing thorough reference checks? Okay, that's one issue. But we make sure, prior to getting to the references, we've done the ticket, we've done the rent assessment, we've done that, and then we also would look on social media. People say they don't have dogs, but their profile picture is them with a big German Shepherd. So we would go a bit more thorough. We would, after we've spoken to the current reference, the previous, current and previous references, and we've finished going through the application, checking everything is as it should be, we then compile a report which for us is a color-coded report. We copy information across from the application to our document, and it automatically gives us what the red flags are, what the orange flags are, and what the green flags are. So it's a traffic light system.
Traffic light system, yeah, that's good.
So we then compile a report for the property manager on an email, and we attach on there, like the price finder. So if someone says that they're living with their parents or a private owner or anything like that, we go on and we check on Price Finder to see who was the rental agent, because it shows you down there when it was last rented. And yes, okay, sometimes properties change hands during tenancies. We check who the owners are, how long that person has owned it for, and we attach a copy of that screenshot for the property manager so they can see that, yes, it was a related party that they're living with. Typically, Darren, personal references, or if you're living with family or friends, they're always going to be good. So we have to identify that sometimes those references might be skewed. That's why we have to check. We check bank accounts for how are they paying rent to a family member to verify that's how it's being paid, the amounts that are being paid. It's very easy, Darren, for someone to manipulate an application form.
I can take a step back. How many property managers out there would actually go to that depth already, particularly checking Price Finder or things like that? How many property managers wouldn't even do that?
I would hate, if I was to guess, I'd probably say less than 20%.
Yeah.
And, the sentiment that we get when we speak to a lot of property managers is they would approve an application or decline an application based on gut. They'll look at it and they'll decline it. They'll say, yep, that's fine. Rather than kind of going down that rabbit hole of verifying everything. Darren, we have to verify everything. We have to make the phone calls. We have to follow a process because that's not my agency. I don't want to jeopardize that agency from getting the right person. We have to be thorough.
Everything's recorded too, right? You also provide
actually every single one of our phone calls is recorded and gets listened to by a QA. So we can pull up phone calls, and we actually, they all get pulled up and graded, making sure that we've asked the right questions, that we're being sympathetic, empathetic, that it's not transactional, because we want it to be relatable and human too, because we want to pick up the BS that can come across. And again, it's only a very small percentage of people that are, got to be cautious of. But we compile everything together. We do the price finder check. We do the ticker check or the NTD checks, all the relevant information. We get all the supporting documents, their pay slips. We check if they're recent pay slips. We ask for what we're legally required to ask for. We then make commentary on the template email that we send out to the property manager. They've got kids, they've got pets, how long is the lease for, their proposed rent, what the rent is, proposed rent, if there's any, because some people make offers on rents. And we have all that in a summary page. The property manager can have a look. Now, if we can't reach a certain reference, we give it back to the property manager after a certain trigger time, whatever is agreed with the client. Because, Darren, you might be able to make a captain's call on the information that you've got. You're an experienced property manager, you know what to look for. And if we give you adequate information, less a couple of things, so we don't hold it up, you might say, yep, I'm satisfied to go ahead, or no, can you please just wait and try and get that balance of information. The tenant is updated when we get to a roadblock and we're not getting through to the reference for whatever reason. We tell the tenant, hey, we really want to process your application. We need your help. Can you let your reference know that we're going to be calling them again in half an hour?
Okay, so let's just say an office is not working with Teams by Design, and they're going to get their virtual assistant to be processing applications. What's some word of advice that you can give?
Train them on the pregnant pauses. Train them on the BS to what to look out for. Have a system in place where, if you are getting slammed with applications, that you go through them with your assistant to work out which ones you want them to focus on. After a period of time, they should kind of pick up the skill to understand what you're looking for. Remember, most property managers are trained and they've had experience. When you have an assistant, you're training them and you're giving them experience. So give them adequate time to become familiar with that process. Don't think that they've done one bad application and you got to take it away from them. I think people can be quite harsh when dealing with a virtual assistant. You have the same issue. I know when I've employed people, Darren, to do and they process applications, they've made mistakes. Right? They've missed things. They're human. Sometimes that happens in your office. But as long as your training and guidance and communication is clear, then they pick it up. Like no one was born a doctor. Right? So you learn these things.
Yeah.
We're just fortunate that, I've been in real estate since 2003, property management. I know systems, procedures. A lot of other agencies out there don't. They might provide virtual assistants, but it's not coming from a real estate background, and not to the level of tech and processes that we had. If you're hiring someone direct, you just need to make sure you've got those procedures and protocols in place.
Yep. You ever have one of those times where you just have a mind block?
Oh no, totally. But when you're dealing with applications. So, it's one of those things where it's so tricky, and you got to be so cautious with and when people apply. Like sometimes, it's funny. I find this funny. We call a lot of real estate agents around Australia, New Zealand, and so on, and we see a lot of them on social media also, and they wouldn't know that it's us calling and doing reference checks. You sometimes, I think Darren, probably out of many calls, like around 100,000 calls, we've done 3 particular reference checks, and in the exact same town, in the exact same office, randomly 3 different people in the office have, they question because they're not used to getting such detailed questions. they're only used to kind of, in this particular town, they're only used to getting some superficial, lighthearted questions because all the property managers know each other and they're very familiar with each other. And, what we find is because we're so thorough, some in this particular town, they just weren't used to having such direct questions and trying to find out information. Funnily enough, this one particular office was trying to offload a bad tenant, and they were saying everything good about this particular tenant and that they paid rent on time every time and what it was. And it was only because our team were able to go through the bank statement at the time and saw when they paid their rent and how much rent they were paying, that we saw they weren't paying the full rent. They weren't paying it on the due date. And
just cross-checking. And again, a lot of property managers just wouldn't go to that level, Michael. So I think it's, it's interesting that property managers out there would criticize, say, virtual assistants like yours doing application processing, but probably have never actually gone to the level and depth that your guys will actually go to.
Yeah, some of the other things you got to be mindful of too, Darren, is sometimes agencies will go on and they'll adjust the rents on realestate.com or whichever platform they're doing it to, and they don't pass that information off. So let's say it's $400 a week and it's down to $350, or they've changed it from $400 to $425. You got to make sure that when you are making changes, that it filters through to the entire office and you make people aware that changes. Because if we're processing an application and we're submitting it to you, we're basing on the rent that's come in, and people make offers all the time on rentals. The other part is, Darren, like once we have clients where once we've given them the application and they've made a decision on it, they'll either tell us to decline the application, please. So we will do the decline rather than just pressing a button and sending the decline off, which is rather impersonal. We'll give them a call and let them know application hasn't been successful. Once we do that, the agency would then send us like a templated email with all the terms of the lease clauses. So this depends on if we're doing leases for people, and that's probably another session. But they'll say this is the term of the lease, this is the amount of the lease, this is the special condition, this is everything we need to know on a template, and then we create the leases for them. So not only have we done the application, we create the leases, and so the information on the lease is only as good as the template email that we get back from the client.
Yeah, well done. And I'd like to say, as an old school property manager myself, having processed thousands of applications in my career, I have an inherent hesitancy when I heard that you were doing application processing. But I know also you've got some really high-powered clients that have very high expectations. And when I hear them raving, I think, wow, Michael's really got this application processing down pat, and I just think congratulations, because even people like me are very hesitant with the idea. I'm absolutely blown away that you've been able to achieve a very rigid system, over 100,000 applications that you've already processed with clients. And I have to say also, you put your team through training that's in the IGT exclusive membership, like the warning signs of a bad tenant. We've got all that training that I've done that's in there, that your team are also compulsory watching for them, that you make sure that they're watching all of that, so they're aware of all these little tricks and things like that. And then with experience, they just get really, really good at it. So, a real congratulations there, Michael. So let's wrap this up. If people want to talk to you about getting their applications processed or anything else that they would like to offload to a virtual assistant service, what's the easiest way to get in contact?
Just go to our website, teamsbydesign.com, and contact us, and then we'll reach out to you, make a time to have a chat over a Zoom.
Yep. All right. Some good nuts and bolts there, Michael. Again, congratulations on coming up with such a robust system, which a lot of people, would think that you wouldn't be able to pull it off, but you definitely have. So congratulations, well done. And thanks everyone. And thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Darren.
Bye.